Wealthy hotel mogul hears her voice 20 floors below and cancels investor meeting. Chapter 1. The moment Declan Grantham heard that voice, he knew his world was about to shatter. It started as whispers floating through his penthouse suite during what was supposed to be another routine business gathering. Investors mingled with champagne flutes, discussing quarterly projections and expansion plans. But when that smoky contralto drifted up from the hotel's jazz lounge 20 floors below, every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Declan set down his bourbon and moved toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Even from this height, even through thick glass and steel, her voice wrapped around him like silk against bare skin. Rich. Haunting. Completely devastating. "Good God," muttered James Crawford, his lead investor. "Who is that?" Carmen Thurman, Declan's assistant, appeared at his elbow with her usual efficiency. "Melody McLaurin. She's performing at the Blue Note tonight. Local jazz singer. Local jazz singer." Such simple words for a voice that seemed to reach inside his chest and squeeze. Declan had built a hotel empire worth $300 million. He controlled every detail of his businesses, his relationships, his life. But standing there listening to her sing about heartbreak and hope, he felt something crack open inside him that had been sealed shut for years. "Cancel the rest of tonight's agenda," he said quietly. Carmen blinked. "Sir? You heard me." His green eyes never left the window. "I'm going downstairs." 20 minutes later, Declan stepped into the Blue Note's intimate darkness. Amber lights cast everything in warm honey, and the air hummed with quiet conversation and clinking glasses. But none of that mattered because there she was. Melody McLaurin stood center stage in a simple black dress that hugged her curves without trying too hard. Her dark skin glowed under the spotlight, and when she moved, it was with a natural grace that spoke of someone comfortable in her own skin. But it was her voice that held him captive. Up close, it was even more powerful, a sound that seemed to pull emotions from places he'd forgotten existed. She was singing Billie Holiday's "Don't Explain," and every word felt like a conversation meant just for him. Her eyes swept the room as she sang, connecting with her audience, drawing them into her story. When her gaze found his, something electric passed between them. Her voice caught, just for a heartbeat, before flowing back into the melody. Declan had dated models, socialites, and successful businesswomen. His ex-wife Nora had been the type of woman who looked perfect on magazine covers. But none of them had ever made him feel like this. Like he was drowning and being saved at the same time. The song ended to enthusiastic applause. Melody smiled, accepting the appreciation with genuine warmth, but Declan noticed how her eyes found his again in the crowd. She was as affected as he was. "Good. Thank you," she said into the microphone, her speaking voice as sultry as her singing. "We're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. The night's just getting started." She moved with ease through the crowd, stopping to chat with regular customers, accepting compliments gracefully. But Declan could see her awareness of him in the way she held her shoulders, the slight tilt of her head that kept him in her peripheral vision. When she finally approached his table, he stood. Manners that were ingrained by Thomas Rhodes, the mentor who'd taught him everything about business and life after his foster care hell. "Mr. Grantham," she said, extending her hand. "I wasn't expecting to see you down here." Her handshake was firm, confident. Her skin was soft and warm. "I own the building," he said simply. "Thought I should know what's happening in it." A smile tugged at her lips. "And what's your assessment?" "Impressive." He held her gaze. "Very impressive." Something flickered in her dark eyes, wariness mixed with interest. She'd dealt with wealthy men before, he realized. And not all of those experiences had been pleasant. "I perform here most Friday nights," she said. "The Blue Note has a wonderful atmosphere." "It does." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Would you join me for a drink? She hesitated, glancing toward the small stage where a pianist, Danny Keys Christie, according to the program, was setting up for the next set. I should get back soon. One drink, Declan said. I have a business proposition. Now her expression shifted to something cooler, more guarded. What kind of proposition? The kind better discussed over good whiskey than shouted over music. She studied his face, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she sat. One drink. He signaled the waitress, ordered bourbon for himself and asked Melody's preference. White wine, she said. Pinot Grigio. When their drinks arrived, Declan took a careful sip of his bourbon, studying the woman across from him. Up close, she was even more striking. Her dark eyes held intelligence and strength, but also maintained distance. She was protecting herself from something. Or someone. How long have you been singing professionally? He asked. About 15 years. Longer if you count church choirs and school talent shows. She sipped her wine. But I assume you already know that. Sharp. He liked that. Carmen mentioned your local talent. She didn't mention you were extraordinary talent. Flattery, Mr. Grantham? Truth. There's a difference. She leaned back in her chair, studying him with open curiosity. So what's this business proposition? Declan set down his glass. I'm opening a new jazz lounge on the top floor of my flagship hotel. Intimate setting, high-end clientele, exceptional acoustics. I need a headliner. Someone who can draw crowds and keep them coming back. And you think that's me? I know it's you. He leaned forward slightly. After hearing you tonight, I can't imagine anyone else up there. Her fingers traced the stem of her wine glass. What are we talking about? Contract terms, compensation, schedule? 6 nights a week, 2 sets per night. Competitive salary plus percentage of cover charges. Full creative control over your repertoire and arrangements. He paused. 200,000 a year to start. Her composure slipped for just a moment, eyes widening, breath catching. 200,000 was clearly more than she'd been expecting. Much more. That's generous, she said carefully. It's what you're worth. He studied her reaction. Maybe more. She was quiet for a long moment, clearly processing. When she looked up, her guard was firmly back in place. What's the catch? No catch. There's always a catch with offers like this. Her voice carried a bitter edge. Especially when they come from men like you. Men like him. Wealthy. Powerful. Used to getting what they wanted. How many times had she been propositioned by someone who saw her talent as secondary to other attributes? The only thing I want, Declan said quietly, is for you to sing. It's all strictly business. She held his gaze for a long moment, as if testing the truth of his words. I'll need to think about it. Of course. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Take all the time you need. Their fingers brushed as she took the card, and that electric awareness sparked again. This time, she didn't hide her reaction to it. I should get back, she said, standing. The second set starts in 10 minutes. I'll be listening. She nodded and walked away, but not before he caught the slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Declan remained at his table through her entire second set. If anything, her voice was even more captivating now. She sang Nina Simone, Ella Fitzgerald, some contemporary pieces he didn't recognize but that showcased her incredible range. And several times during the performance, her eyes found his in the dim lighting. When the evening ended and the crowd began to disperse, he watched her pack up her things, exchange hugs with Danny Keys, and graciously accept praise from lingering fans. She was a professional, he realized. Someone who took her craft seriously and treated her audience with respect. She paused at his table on her way out. "Thank you for staying. Thank you for the performance." Both sets were. He searched for words that didn't sound like empty flattery. Moving. That's what jazz is supposed to do. Move people. She shifted her purse to her other shoulder. "I meant what I said earlier. I need to think about your offer." "I understand. But don't take too long." He stood again. "Good talent gets snapped up quickly in this city." "Is that a threat, Mr. Grantham?" "It's reality." He smiled. "But if it helps, I'm patient." "To a point." She studied his face one more time, as if memorizing it. "Good night." "Good night, Melody." He watched her leave, noting the confident way she moved even when she thought no one was looking. This was a woman who'd faced struggles and survived them. Who'd learned to rely on herself because she couldn't count on anyone else. Which made his reaction to her all the more dangerous. Declan Grantham didn't rescue people. He didn't get emotionally involved with business arrangements. And he sure as hell didn't let beautiful women with complicated lives anywhere near his structured world. But as he rode the elevator back to his penthouse suite, her voice still echoing in his head, he realized it might already be too late for those rules. Have you ever heard a voice that seemed to reach inside and touch your soul? That moment when sound becomes something more, a connection that bypasses your mind and speaks directly to your heart? If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our Dear Love Diaries family. Your special place in this community of heartfelt stories is waiting for you. These passionate journeys of souls connecting against all odds have brought together thousands of beautiful hearts just like yours. Make sure you hit the bell too, so you'll know immediately when a new story unfolds in our diary of love. 2 days later, Melody hadn't called. Declan tried to focus on the quarterly report spread across his office desk, but his mind kept drifting to smoky jazz vocals and dark eyes that seemed to see right through his expensive suits to the foster kid still hiding underneath. Carmen appeared in his doorway with her usual efficiency. "The acoustics team is ready for your approval on the new lounge. They need final specifications by Thursday if we're staying on schedule." "Schedule?" She raised an eyebrow. "The jazz lounge opening? Next month? The project you've been driving everyone crazy about for 6 weeks?" "Right. The jazz lounge. The one he'd designed specifically after hearing Melody sing, though he'd never admit that to Carmen." "Any word from Ms. McLaurin?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "She hasn't called," Carmen replied. "Should I follow up?" "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "She'll call when she's ready." Or she wouldn't. Maybe she'd already decided his offer was too good to be true. Maybe some other club had made her a better deal. Maybe she'd looked him up online and decided she didn't want to get involved with someone whose divorce had been tabloid fodder for 3 months. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Grantham? There's a Melody McLaurin here to see you." Declan's pulse jumped, but he kept his voice level. "Send her up." He stood, straightening his tie, then caught himself. Since when did he primp for business meetings? Since a jazz singer with a voice like whiskey and honey had walked into his controlled world and turned it upside down, apparently. The elevator chimed, and Carmen ushered Melody into his office. She looked different in daylight, more businesslike in dark slacks and a cream-colored blouse, her hair pulled back in a low chignon. But she was just as beautiful, and that voice when she said, "Hello, Mr. Grantham," still made something tighten in his chest. "Please, call me Declan." He gestured toward the seating area away from his desk. "Can I get you anything? Coffee, water?" Coffee would be nice. Black. He liked that she wasn't high maintenance. As Carmen went to get the coffee, Melody moved toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The late afternoon sun cast everything in golden light, and she seemed to glow in it. Beautiful view, she said. It's one of the reasons I chose this building. He joined her at the windows, careful to maintain professional distance even though he wanted to step closer. You can see the whole city from up here. Must be nice. Having that perspective. There was something in her tone, not quite resentment, but awareness of the differences between them. His penthouse view versus her world 20 floors below. Carmen returned with coffee and quietly withdrew, closing the office door behind her. Melody settled into one of the leather chairs, cradling her mug in both hands. I've been thinking about your offer. And? It's generous. Very generous. She sipped her coffee, gathering her thoughts. Which makes me wonder why. Declan sat across from her. I explained why. You're talented. There are a lot of talented singers in this city. Most of them younger, more marketable. Marketable. Code for willing to trade more than just their voices for success. His jaw tightened. I'm not interested in marketable, he said quietly. I'm interested in authentic. In voices that move people. She studied his face, looking for deception or hidden motives. What exactly would this arrangement entail? Exactly what I said Friday night. 6 nights a week, 2 sets per night. You choose your own material, work with whatever musicians you prefer. The space is yours when you're performing. And when I'm not performing? Then you go home to your life, and I go back to running my hotels. That's it? That's it. She was quiet for a moment, still searching his expression. I have a daughter. The words hung in the air between them. This was important, he realized. A test of some kind. How old? 14. She's the reason I need to be careful about decisions like this. Melody's voice carried a fierce protectiveness. I can't afford mistakes that might affect her stability. Declan felt something shift inside his chest. He recognized that tone, that careful way of speaking about someone you'd protect with your life. He'd never had children, but Thomas Rhodes had spoken about him that way during those crucial early years. What's her name? Aaliyah. Tell me about her. Melody's guarded expression softened slightly. She's smart, really smart. Honor roll, debate team, college prep classes. She wants to study pre-med at Northwestern. Northwestern. Expensive. Very expensive. Now her wariness about his offer made more sense. She wasn't just thinking about herself, she was thinking about tuition, about her daughter's future, about all the ways accepting help from a wealthy man could complicate their lives. She sounds remarkable, he said quietly. She is. Melody's smile was soft, genuine. She's everything I'm working for. The vulnerability in that admission did something to his defenses. This wasn't about ambition or fame or even money, exactly. This was about a mother doing everything she could to give her daughter opportunities she'd never had. The offer stands, Declan said quietly. Whatever you decide. She set down her coffee mug. I'd want a contract. Something clear and professional. Of course. And I'd want to see the space first. Meet the sound engineer, understand the technical requirements. I can arrange that. Today, if you'd like. Her surprise showed. Today? The construction is nearly finished. It's not officially open, but it's functional. He stood. Would you like to see it? She hesitated, and he could practically see her weighing risks and benefits. Finally, curiosity won. All right. The elevator ride to the top floor was quiet, filled with an awareness neither of them acknowledged. When the doors opened, Melody stepped into what would soon be the Crown Room, Grantham Hotel's flagship jazz venue. Even unfinished, it was spectacular. Intimate seating for maybe 60 people, with every table positioned for optimal sight lines to the small stage. The acoustics had been designed by the same team that worked with Oasis Center, and the sound system was state-of-the-art but nearly invisible. The piano is a 1947 Steinway, Declan said, watching her move around the space. Fully restored. Danny Keys helped me select it. That surprised her. You know Danny? I had Carmen research local musicians. His name came up repeatedly as one of the best jazz pianists in the city. I wanted to make sure whoever performed here would have the best possible support. She ran her fingers along the piano's edge, then pressed a few keys. The sound was rich, warm, perfect. This is beautiful. Try it out. See how it feels. Melody looked around the empty room, then back at the piano. Without warning, she began to sing. No microphone, no amplification, just her voice filling the space with a haunting version of "The Way You Look Tonight." Declan felt his breath catch. In this acoustically perfect room, her voice was even more powerful. It seemed to wrap around him, pulling him deeper into whatever spell she cast when she sang. He found himself moving closer, drawn by something stronger than curiosity. She noticed his approach and smiled without stopping the song. When their eyes met, the lyrics took on new meaning. The way she looked at him while singing about beauty and grace and falling in love made his pulse race. The song ended, and silence settled around them like silk. The acoustics are perfect, she said softly. Yes. His voice was rougher than usual. They are. They were standing close now, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, close enough to catch her scent, something warm and subtle that made him want to lean closer still. This is dangerous, she said quietly. What is this? Us. Standing here like this. But she didn't step away. We're discussing a business arrangement. Are we? Her smile was knowing, a little sad. Because it doesn't feel like business. He should step back. Should return to professional distance, safe territory. Instead, he found himself saying, "What does it feel like? Like something I should walk away from." She finally took that step back, breaking the tension. For both our sakes. The spell shattered, leaving him feeling oddly bereft. Because I'm wealthy? Because you're you. She moved toward the windows, putting more distance between them. Men like you don't date women like me without expecting something in return. What kind of woman are you? She turned back to face him. A single mother with a 15-year-old car who sings in jazz clubs to pay her rent. A woman who shops at Target and clips coupons and worries about her daughter's college fund every night before she goes to sleep. And what kind of man am I? The kind who can solve problems with money. Who's used to getting what he wants when he wants it. Her expression was matter-of-fact, not accusatory. The kind who probably has a different woman in his bed every week. That last part stung because it used to be true. Before his divorce, after his divorce, until, when had he stopped caring about casual arrangements with beautiful women who wanted nothing from him but expensive dinners and designer jewelry? You think you know me, he said quietly. I know enough. She moved toward the elevator. I should go. Thank you for showing me the space. Melody. She paused, her hand on the elevator call button. What would it take? For what? For you to trust me. To believe this is exactly what I said it was, a business arrangement with someone whose voice deserves to be heard. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm capable of that kind of trust anymore. The elevator arrived, and she stepped inside. As the doors began to close, she said, I'll give you an answer by tomorrow. Alone in the empty lounge, Declan walked to the piano and pressed the same keys she'd touched. The sound echoed in the silence, and he realized he was in more trouble than he'd thought. Because somewhere between her first song Friday night and watching her sing in his perfect acoustics, this had stopped being about business at all. Chapter 2. Melody called the next morning at precisely 9 o'clock. "I accept," she said without preamble when Carmen put her through to Declan's office. "Your offer." "I accept." Declan set down his coffee, surprised by the relief that flooded through him. "Good. When can you start?" "I'll need 2 weeks to finish my obligations at the Blue Note. And I want that contract in writing before I give notice. Carmen will have it ready by tomorrow." He leaned back in his chair. "What changed your mind?" A pause. "Aaliyah's been accepted to Northwestern for early admission. The scholarship covers tuition, but room and board." She didn't finish the sentence. Room and board at Northwestern would run close to $20,000 a year. On top of everything else a college student needed. His offer had just become the difference between her daughter's dream and a crushing mountain of debt. "Congratulations to Aaliyah," he said quietly. "Northwestern is an excellent school. She's worked incredibly hard for this." There was fierce pride in Melody's voice. "I won't let money be the reason she can't go." "It won't be." Another pause. "This is just business, right? What you said about the arrangement?" "Just business," he confirmed, even as something in his chest tightened at the words. "Then I'll see you in 2 weeks." The line went dead, leaving Declan staring at his phone. Just business. That's what they'd both agreed on. So why did it feel like he'd just signed up for the most complicated business arrangement of his life? 2 weeks later, Melody arrived at the Crown Room for her first rehearsal carrying a battered leather portfolio and wearing jeans that had seen better days. She looked younger somehow, less guarded than she had during their business meetings. "The sound equipment arrived yesterday," Declan said, watching her take in the completed space. Crystal chandeliers now hung from the ceiling, casting warm light over burgundy velvet seating. The bar gleamed with polished brass and imported marble. "Everything you requested. It's beautiful." She moved toward the stage, running her hand along the gleaming piano. "Almost too beautiful." "What do you mean?" "Places like this, they have expectations. Standards." She looked around at the elegant furnishings, the expensive artwork. "What if I don't live up to them?" "You will." The certainty in his voice surprised them both. "Trust me." She met his gaze. "You seem very sure of that." "I am." He moved closer, drawn as always by something he couldn't quite name. "I've heard you sing, remember?" Danny Keys arrived then, saving them from whatever was building between them. The pianist was a slight man in his 50s with gentle eyes and sure hands. He greeted Melody with a warm hug and Declan with professional courtesy. "Beautiful instrument," Danny said, settling at the piano bench. "Haven't played a Steinway this fine in years." "I want you to be comfortable," Declan said. "Both of you. This is your space now." They ran through several songs, working out arrangements and testing sound levels. Declan found himself lingering longer than necessary, fascinated by watching Melody work. She was completely professional with Danny, discussing tempo changes and key signatures with an expertise that reminded him she'd been doing this for 15 years. But several times during the rehearsal, her eyes found his in the dim lighting, and that electric awareness sparked between them again. "I should let you finish," he said finally. "Carmen will be up shortly with the final contract details." "Declan." His name on her lips made him pause at the elevator. "Thank you. For this opportunity. Thank you for taking it." The elevator doors closed between them, but he could still hear her voice as she ran through another song with Danny. Rich, sultry, absolutely mesmerizing. Just business, he reminded himself. But his reflection in the elevator's polished steel looked skeptical. The Crown Room's soft opening was scheduled for Friday night, a private event for select hotel guests and VIPs. Declan had planned to greet everyone, make appropriate small talk, then retreat to his penthouse office to work while Melody performed. That plan lasted exactly until she walked onto the stage. She wore a deep emerald dress that complemented her skin tone perfectly, her hair swept up to show the elegant line of her neck. When she began singing Fever, her voice smoky and intimate in the acoustically perfect room, every conversation stopped. Declan stood at the back of the room, transfixed. She commanded the stage with quiet confidence, drawing her audience into each song's story. When she sang about desire and longing, he felt like she was singing directly to him. "She's extraordinary," said a voice beside him. Declan turned to find Thomas Rhodes, his mentor and surrogate father, holding a bourbon and studying the stage with appreciation. At 72, Thomas still cut an impressive figure in his tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. "Yes," Declan said simply. "She is. Reminds me of Billie Holiday. Same emotional depth, same ability to make you believe every word." Thomas sipped his bourbon. "Where did you find her?" "She was performing at the Blue Note." Declan kept his eyes on Melody as she transitioned into The Way You Look Tonight. Local talent. Local treasure, more like. Thomas studied Declan's profile. "You're smitten." "She's an employee." "That's not what I asked." Thomas's smile was knowing. "I've known you for 23 years, son. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you're looking at her." Declan finally tore his gaze away from the stage. "It's complicated. The best ones usually are." Thomas finished his bourbon. "Just don't let fear keep you from something real. You've been alone long enough." Alone. Had he been alone? His calendar was full of social obligations, business dinners, charity events where beautiful women competed for his attention. But sitting in his penthouse night after night, the silence broken only by the hum of the city below, yes, he'd been profoundly alone. The set ended to enthusiastic applause. Melody graciously accepted the appreciation, announced a brief intermission, then made her way through the crowd. She stopped to chat with guests, accepting compliments with genuine warmth, but Declan noticed how her eyes searched the room until they found his. She excused herself from a conversation and approached him. "How did it go?" "See for yourself." He gestured around the room where guests were still buzzing with excitement, many asking the waitstaff when they could make reservations for future shows. "They seem pleased." Her smile was radiant, transforming her face. "I was nervous." "You didn't show it." "Good training." "My grandmother used to say never let them see you sweat, even if you're drowning inside." Thomas cleared his throat pointedly, and Declan realized he'd been staring. "Melody, I'd like you to meet Thomas Rhodes." "Thomas, Melody McLaurin." Thomas took her hand with old-world courtesy. "Ms. McLaurin, that was a magnificent performance. You have a rare gift." "Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. That means a great deal. I understand you'll be our resident artist here. We're very fortunate to have you." Something in Thomas's tone suggested he knew more about Declan's feelings than Declan was comfortable with. Before he could intervene, Melody was called back to the stage for her second set. "Don't," Declan warned as Thomas opened his mouth. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't need to. I could hear you thinking." Thomas chuckled. "She's lovely. Talented. And she looks at you like she's trying to solve a puzzle. It's a business arrangement. Keep telling yourself that." Thomas patted Declan's shoulder. "But maybe consider that some business arrangements are worth complicating." The second set was even better than the first. Melody seemed more relaxed, more connected to her audience. When she sang, at last, her voice full of longing and hope, Declan felt something shift in his chest. The careful walls he'd built around his heart, fortified after Nora's betrayal, developed a significant crack. After the guests left and the staff finished cleaning, Declan found himself alone with Melody in the crown room. She was packing up her things, moving with the efficient grace of someone who'd done this countless times. Successful first night, he said, joining her near the piano. It felt good. Really good. She looked around the elegant space. I could get used to this. I hope you do. They were standing close again, the way they had that first day when she'd sung for him in the empty room. The city lights glittered through the windows, casting everything in silver and shadow. Declan? Her voice was softer now, uncertain. Yes? Earlier, when you were watching me perform, it didn't feel like you were watching an employee. His pulse quickened. How did it feel? She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. Like you were watching a woman you wanted. The honesty in her voice, the vulnerability she was showing him, made his carefully maintained control slip. Maybe I was. This complicates things. Yes, he said quietly. It does. She reached up, her fingertips barely brushing his cheek. I should go home. You should. But neither of them moved. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and danger. He could feel her breath, warm against his skin. Could see the pulse beating at the base of her throat. One step closer and he could kiss her, could find out if she tasted as good as she sounded when she sang. Instead, he stepped back. Carmen will have your schedule for next week, he said, his voice rougher than usual. The spell shattered. Melody blinked, her own composure returning like armor sliding into place. Of course. Next week. She gathered her things quickly, efficiently, not looking at him. At the elevator, she paused. This can't happen again, she said quietly. No, he agreed. It can't. But as the elevator doors closed between them, they both knew they were lying. The following week fell into a routine that was both comfortable and torturous. Melody arrived each evening at 5 for sound checks and rehearsal. Declan found reasons to be in the crown room during those hours, ostensibly checking on operations but really just wanting to hear her practice. She was always professional, always friendly, but she maintained careful distance. No more lingering looks during performance. No more casual touches or moments of dangerous proximity. She was honoring their agreement that it couldn't happen again. Which made his growing obsession with her all the more problematic. You're distracted, Carmen observed Thursday afternoon, finding him staring out his office window instead of reviewing the quarterly projections she'd brought him. I'm thinking. About Ms. McLaurin. It wasn't a question. Carmen had worked for him for 8 years, she knew all his tells. About the Crown Room's performance metrics, he corrected. Which are excellent, by the way. We're booked solid for the next 6 weeks. Carmen set the reports on his desk. She's very talented. Yes. And beautiful. Carmen. And clearly attracted to you, despite her best efforts to hide it. Declan finally turned from the window. I'm not having this conversation. Maybe you should be having it with someone. Carmen's expression was uncharacteristically gentle. It's been 2 years since Nora. Maybe it's time to consider that not every woman is interested in your bank account. His ex-wife's betrayal still stung, even after 2 years. Discovering that Nora had been systematically transferring money to offshore accounts while planning her exit strategy had destroyed his ability to trust his own judgment about women. Melody needs this job, he said quietly. Her daughter's going to Northwestern in the fall. So you're protecting her from yourself? I'm protecting both of us from a mistake. Carmen gathered the reports he clearly wasn't going to review. For what it's worth, I think you're wrong. But you're the boss. That evening, Declan found himself in the Crown Room again during Melody's rehearsal. She was working on new material, contemporary jazz pieces that showcased her incredible range. Danny accompanied her on piano while she experimented with phrasing and dynamics. Try it slower, Danny suggested during Black Coffee. Let the melancholy breathe. Melody nodded and began again, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper that seemed to caress every word. The song was about heartbreak, about drowning sorrows in late-night solitude, and she sang it like she'd lived every line. Declan found himself wondering about her past, about the relationships that had taught her such wariness about wealthy men. Who had hurt her? Used her? Made her believe she couldn't trust her own judgment? The song ended, and Melody looked up to find him watching from the back of the room. For a moment, her careful composure slipped, and he saw something raw and vulnerable in her expression. "That was beautiful," he said, moving closer. "Thank you." She stepped down from the small stage. "I wasn't sure about adding contemporary pieces to the repertoire." "Your instincts are good. Trust them." "My instincts?" She gave him a rueful smile. "My instincts are what got me into trouble in the first place." Danny excused himself to get coffee from the bar, leaving them alone in the intimate space. The silence stretched between them, comfortable but charged. "What kind of trouble?" Declan asked softly. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she said, "I was 26 when I met Aaliyah's father. He was older, successful, charming. Everything I thought I wanted." Declan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What happened?" "He promised me things. A recording contract, a life together, support for my career." Her laugh was bitter. What he wanted was a beautiful young singer who'd be grateful for his attention. Someone who'd make him look good at industry parties and not ask too many questions about where he spent his other nights. "He cheated on you. He was married." The words came out flat, matter of fact. "I didn't know until I was 5 months pregnant. His wife called me one day to suggest I handle the situation before it became embarrassing for them both." Rage. Pure, burning rage flooded through Declan at the thought of anyone treating her that way. "What did you do?" "I kept my daughter and walked away from everything else. The promises, the contract, the whole glittering life I thought I wanted." She met his eyes. "Best decision I ever made. He doesn't see Aaliyah. He signed away his parental rights when she was born. Paid me a lump sum to disappear and keep quiet about the whole thing." Her smile was fierce. "I used his money to buy my house." Seemed fitting. Now he understood her wariness, her careful distance. She'd been betrayed by a wealthy, powerful man who'd used her feelings against her. Who'd made promises he never intended to keep and abandoned her when she became inconvenient. "I'm not him," Declan said quietly. "I know." Her voice was soft, almost sad. "That's what makes this so dangerous." "What do you mean?" She moved closer, close enough that he could see the vulnerability she usually kept hidden. "I mean that when you look at me like that, when you listen to me sing like every word matters, when you create a space this beautiful just so I have somewhere worthy to perform." She shook her head. "I start to forget all the reasons I need to keep my distance." His control, already frayed from days of watching her and wanting her, snapped. He reached for her, his hands framing her face, and she didn't pull away. "Maybe," he said against her lips, "distance is overrated." The kiss was gentle at first, testing, giving her every opportunity to stop this before it went too far. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt as if anchoring herself to him. She tasted like possibility and danger and everything he'd been denying himself. When she made a soft sound of surrender, he deepened the kiss, pulling her closer until there was no space between them. Reality crashed back when Danny's voice carried from the bar, "Melody? We should run through Blue Moon one more time." They broke apart, both breathing hard. Melody's lips were swollen, her styled hair mussed from his fingers. She looked beautiful and thoroughly kissed and terrified. "This can't happen," she whispered, the same words from last week. "I know." But his hands were still on her waist, and he made no move to let her go. My job, my daughter's future. She searched his eyes, looking for promises he couldn't make, assurances that this wouldn't destroy everything she'd worked for. He wanted to give them to her, but they both knew the risks were real. Finally, she stepped back, her composure sliding back into place like a mask. I should finish rehearsal. Melody. She paused, looking back at him. For what it's worth. I'm not sorry. Her smile was sad, beautiful, and full of regret. Neither am I. That's the problem. She returned to the stage, to Danny and her music and the safe distance of performance. But something fundamental had shifted between them. The careful boundaries they'd established had been crossed, and there was no going back to just business. Declan remained in the crown room through the rest of rehearsal, watching her perform and knowing he was in deeper trouble than he'd ever imagined. Because somewhere between her first song and that kiss, his world hadn't just developed cracks. It had completely shattered. Chapter 3. The kiss changed everything and nothing. For 3 days, Declan and Melody maintained perfect professional distance. She arrived for rehearsals and performances on schedule, greeted him with polite courtesy when their paths crossed, and gave no indication that anything had shifted between them. To outside observers, they were exactly what they'd agreed to be. Employer and employee, nothing more. But the air between them crackled with unspoken awareness. When she performed, her eyes found his in the dim lighting with an intensity that made his pulse race. When he complimented her work, her breath caught in a way that suggested she was remembering the feel of his lips against hers. Sunday evening brought their first real test. The Crown Room was closed on Sundays, but Melody had requested access to work on new arrangements. Declan told himself he was checking security systems when he used his key card to enter the darkened lounge at 8 o'clock. She was alone at the piano, picking out a melody he didn't recognize. She'd traded her performance attire for jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Without makeup and stage lights, she looked younger, more approachable. I didn't expect anyone else to be here, she said without looking up from the keys. Building security. The lie came easily. Making rounds. Of course. Her smile suggested she knew better. Just me and Steinway working out some ideas. He should leave. Should make his excuses and retreat to his penthouse where he could maintain safe distance from whatever spell she cast just by existing in his space. Instead, he found himself moving closer. What are you working on? Something new. Contemporary piece by a songwriter I know. Her fingers moved across the keys with sure grace. She wrote it about second chances. About finding love when you thought you were too damaged for it anymore. The lyrics she hummed along with the melody spoke of walls built from past hurts, of hearts learning to trust again. When she sang the chorus, something about letting someone past your defenses even when you know they could destroy you, he felt the words like a physical touch. It's beautiful, he said quietly. It's terrifying. She finally looked at him. The idea that someone could matter that much. That you could want something badly enough to risk everything you've built to protect yourself. They weren't talking about the song anymore. Sometimes the risk is worth it, he said. How do you know? How do you tell the difference between worth it and foolish? He sat beside her on the piano bench, close enough to feel her warmth but not quite touching. I don't think you can. Not until after. Her fingers stilled on the keys. That's not very reassuring. No, he agreed. It's not. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken possibilities settling around them like evening shadows. Tell me about your daughter, he said finally. Melody's expression softened the way it always did when the conversation turned to Aaliyah. What do you want to know? Everything. What she's like, what she dreams about, what makes her laugh. She's brilliant. Scary brilliant sometimes. Melody's fingers absently traced the piano keys. She taught herself calculus over summer break because she was bored. She can debate politics with adults twice her age and win. But she still sleeps with this ridiculous stuffed elephant she's had since she was 3. She sounds remarkable. She is. She's also stubborn as hell and has opinions about everything. Melody's laugh was warm, full of maternal pride. Last week she lectured me for 20 minutes about my outdated views on romantic relationships. What kind of outdated views? According to Aaliyah, I'm too cautious. Too focused on protecting myself instead of taking chances on happiness. She gave him a meaningful look. Apparently, being alone is not a noble sacrifice, it's just being alone. Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes. Melody's expression grew serious. She's been after me to start dating again. Says I use her as an excuse to avoid getting hurt. Is she right? Melody was quiet for a long moment. Partly. It's easier to say I'm focused on being a good mother than to admit I'm scared of making another mistake. Of choosing wrong again and having it affect her life. What if you chose right this time? The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither was quite ready to address directly. I don't trust my judgment anymore, she said softly. Aaliyah's father was charming, successful, seemingly perfect. And I was so blinded by what I thought I wanted that I missed all the signs of what he really was. Declan understood that fear intimately. Nora had seemed perfect too, beautiful, accomplished, from the right social circles. It had taken him months after the divorce to realize he'd never really known her at all. What signs? He asked. The way he always steered conversations away from anything personal. How he never introduced me to his friends or family. The fact that he would disappear for days at a time and get angry when I asked questions. She shook her head. I told myself it was because he was busy, because successful men have complicated lives. I made excuses for behavior that should have been red flags. You were young. I was naive. There's a difference. She looked at him directly. I swore I'd never be that vulnerable again. Never let desire cloud my judgment about what someone's really offering. The parallels to his own experience with Nora were unsettling. The way he'd explained away her secretiveness, her reluctance to discuss finances, her increasing distance in the months before she left. He'd been so focused on maintaining the perfect marriage he'd thought he wanted that he'd missed signs of the betrayal being planned right under his nose. What happened with your ex-wife? Melody asked, as if reading his thoughts. Declan had never discussed Nora's betrayal with anyone except his lawyers and Thomas. But sitting here with Melody in the quiet intimacy of the empty lounge, he found himself wanting to share the truth. I thought we had a good marriage. Not passionate, but comfortable. Stable. He stared at the piano keys. Turns out she'd been systematically moving money to accounts I didn't know about for over a year before she filed for divorce. How much? Enough to matter. Enough that she could disappear to Europe with her personal trainer and live very comfortably. His laugh was bitter. I never saw it coming. Never questioned why she suddenly wanted separate financial advisors, separate credit cards. I trusted her completely. I'm sorry. The worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing how little I'd actually known her. We were married for 6 years, and she was essentially a stranger. He met Melody's eyes. After that, it became easier to keep relationships simple. Surface level. No deep emotional investments, no shared vulnerabilities. Until now. Until now, he agreed quietly. She reached over and covered his hand with hers, the first intentional touch between them since the kiss. Her skin was warm, soft, comforting in a way he hadn't expected. We're quite a pair, she said. Both too damaged to trust our own feelings. Maybe that's why this feels different. Because we understand each other's fears. Her thumb traced across his knuckles in a gesture so tender it made his chest tight. Or maybe it's why we should be more careful. Two people afraid of drowning probably shouldn't jump in the deep end together. Probably not. But he turned his hand palm up, capturing her fingers with his. Doesn't seem to be stopping us though. No, she said softly. It doesn't. They sat like that for several heartbeats, hands linked, breathing each other's air, teetering on the edge of something that could change both their lives. I should go, she said finally, but made no move to pull away. You should. My daughter is expecting me home. How much does she know? About this job, about me? She knows I'm performing at an upscale hotel. She knows the money is good enough to cover Northwestern without loans. Melody's smile was rueful. She also knows I've been different since I started working here. Happier. More alive, I guess. Different how? I sing around the house now. Real songs, not just humming while I do dishes. I bought new clothes. Not just practical things, but a dress I liked because it made me feel beautiful. I've been hopeful about things that have nothing to do with paying bills or planning for college. Her honesty gutted him. When was the last time anyone had described him as a source of hope rather than a business opportunity or social advancement? That scares you, he observed. Terrifies me. Because hope is dangerous when you can't afford to be wrong. She pulled her hand free, the loss of contact immediately noticeable. I can't mess this up, Declan. Whatever this is between us, whatever we're dancing around, I can't let it jeopardize Aaliyah's future. He wanted to promise her it wouldn't, wanted to guarantee that he'd never hurt her the way she'd been hurt before. But they both knew how hollow such promises could be. What if we took it slow, he heard himself saying. What if we figured out what this is without making it complicated? How? Dinner. Tomorrow night, after your performance. Nothing fancy, nowhere public where people might make assumptions. Just getting to know each other better. She was quiet for so long he thought she'd refuse. Finally, she said, where? My penthouse. I'll cook. You cook? I make a decent pasta. Thomas insisted I learn basic life skills despite having money for restaurants and housekeepers. He smiled. Something about not becoming a helpless rich man who couldn't take care of himself. I like Thomas. He likes you too. Asked me yesterday when I was going to stop being an idiot and ask you out properly. That surprised a laugh out of her. He said that? His exact words were, stop being a coward and invite that lovely woman to dinner before someone else does. Someone else? He may have mentioned that several hotel guests have asked Carmen about your availability. Declan felt a spike of possessiveness at the memory. Apparently you have admirers. But not the one I want, she said quietly, then looked startled by her own admission. The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable and completely devastating to his control. Melody. Her name came out rough, loaded with want and restraint and the promise of everything he was trying not to feel. I know. I shouldn't have said that. I'm glad you did. He stood, needing distance before he did something that would prove her caution justified. Tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. Just dinner and conversation. She nodded, not trusting her voice. At the elevator, he paused. For what it's worth, you're the one I want too. The doors closed before she could respond, but he saw her expression shift from surprise to something that looked dangerously like hope. Monday evening's performance was electric with unspoken tension. Melody sang with an emotional intensity that had the Crown Room's clientele completely captivated, but every song felt like it was meant for an audience of one. When she performed The Very Thought of You, her eyes found Declan's in the dim lighting and held them through the entire chorus. After the last guest left and the staff finished cleaning, they found themselves alone again. The routine was becoming familiar, and increasingly dangerous. Ready? He asked simply. She nodded, gathering her things with hands that trembled slightly. Whether from nerves or anticipation, he couldn't tell. The elevator ride to his penthouse was quiet, filled with an awareness that made ordinary spaces feel charged with possibility. When the doors opened to reveal his private residence, Melody stepped inside with obvious curiosity. "It's not what I expected," she said, taking in the warm colors and comfortable furnishings. "What did you expect?" "Something colder. More corporate." She moved toward the wall of windows overlooking the city. "This feels like home." It did, more so with her in it. The realization should have terrified him, but instead it felt like recognition. Like something settling into place that he hadn't realized was missing. "Wine?" he offered. "Please." He poured 2 glasses of Pinot Noir, using the time to study her profile as she gazed out at the glittering cityscape. She'd changed from her performance dress into dark slacks and a cream silk blouse that made her skin glow. Without stage lighting and the barrier of professional distance, she looked softer, more accessible. "Here." He handed her the wine, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "Thank you." She sipped, then smiled. "This is good. Thomas's recommendation. He says life's too short for bad wine." "Smart man." She settled onto his couch, tucking her feet under her in a gesture that was completely natural and utterly charming. "So tell me about this pasta you're making." "Penne with roasted vegetables and herbs. Nothing too ambitious." He sat beside her, careful to maintain respectful distance. "I thought we could talk while I cook." "What do you want to talk about?" "Everything. Your childhood, your dreams, what made you choose jazz over other genres. The things people don't ask in business meetings." She was quiet for a moment, swirling wine in her glass. "My grandmother. She's the reason I sing jazz." "Tell me about her." "Grace McLaurin. She sang in clubs in Chicago in the 50s and 60s. Never made it big, but she had the most beautiful voice." Melody's smile was soft with memory. "She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. But Gran, she saved me. Took me in, taught me that music could heal anything if you let it." Her voice carried deep affection. She used to say that jazz was the only truly honest music because you couldn't fake the emotion. Either you felt it or you didn't, and the audience always knew the difference. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. She died 3 years after Aaliyah was born. "I still miss her every day." Melody looked at him. "What about you? Any family besides Helena?" "Just Helena and Thomas. My parents died when I was 7, house fire. I spent the next 10 years in foster care until Thomas took me under his wing." Her expression softened with sympathy. "That must have been difficult. Some placements were better than others. I learned early that the only person I could count on was myself." He sipped his wine. "Thomas changed that. He was my business professor in college, but he became much more. Taught me that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with." "Is that why you married Nora?" The question was gentle but direct. He appreciated that she didn't dance around difficult subjects. "Partly. I thought she represented the kind of life I wanted, stable, respectable, uncomplicated." He laughed at his own naivety. "Turns out I was better at building hotels than reading people. We all make mistakes in love. Do we?" He turned to face her more fully. "Or do we just choose people who can't really hurt us and then act surprised when the relationships feel empty?" She considered this. "You think that's what we both did? Chose people who were emotionally unavailable so we could feel safe?" "I think we chose people who wanted something from us other than our hearts. Your ex wanted a beautiful distraction. Nora wanted financial security. Neither of them were interested in who we really were underneath. And what happens when someone is interested in who you really are? He met her eyes. I guess we're about to find out. The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable and completely terrifying. Sometimes love finds us when we least expect it, doesn't it? When we've built walls around our hearts and convinced ourselves we're better off alone. Have you ever met someone who made you want to risk everything, despite every logical reason not to? Share your thoughts below, we'd love to hear about your own unexpected connections. Melody set down her wine glass. I should help with dinner. You're my guest. I'm nervous. Cooking will give me something to do with my hands. He understood. The intimacy of this evening, the honesty they were sharing, felt both necessary and dangerous. In his kitchen, they moved together with surprising ease. She chopped vegetables while he prepared the pasta, their conversations flowing from childhood memories to favorite books to dreams they'd never shared with anyone else. When she laughed at one of his stories about Helena's attempts to set him up with appropriate society women, the sound filled his home with warmth he'd never realized was missing. She means well, Melody said, sliding roasted peppers into the pan. But I imagine her idea of appropriate and mine might be different. Helena values background and breeding above all else. She thinks love is something that happens between people from similar circumstances. What do you think? Declan paused, considering. I think love happens when it happens. Background doesn't matter if two people truly see each other. Do you think we see each other? The question was quiet, vulnerable. He stopped cooking and turned to face her fully. I see a woman who's stronger than she realizes. Who's sacrificed her own dreams to give her daughter everything she never had. Who sings like an angel but guards her heart like it's made of glass. Her breath caught. What else? I see someone who's afraid to trust her own feelings but brave enough to be here anyway. Someone who makes me want things I convinced myself I didn't need. What kind of things? Partnership. Real conversation. Someone to come home to who cares about more than my portfolio or my connections. He stepped closer. Someone who looks at me like I'm worth the risk. She reached up, her hand settling against his cheek. You are worth the risk. That's what terrifies me. He covered her hand with his, holding it against his face. We don't have to figure it all out tonight. What do we have to do? Just this. Just be here, together, and see what happens. She rose on her toes and kissed him then, soft and tentative at first, then deeper when he responded. This kiss was different from the one in the crown room, less desperate, more exploratory. Like they were learning each other, mapping the territory of whatever was growing between them. When they broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, she rested her forehead against his. This is crazy, she whispered. Completely. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old car and stretch marks from pregnancy. I have trust issues and an ex-wife who cleaned out my accounts and enough emotional baggage to fill a cargo plane. She laughed, the sound vibrating between them. We're disasters. Perfect disasters. The pasta's burning. I don't care. But she pulled away to rescue dinner, and he let her, knowing they needed time to process what was happening between them. They ate at his dining table, talking about everything except the kiss, both of them hyper-aware of every glance and accidental touch. I should go, she said when they finished the bottle of wine and exhausted safer topics of conversation. I'll walk you down. You don't have to. Yes, I do. In the elevator, the tension was thick enough to cut. When the doors opened to the parking garage, she turned to face him. Thank you for tonight. For dinner, for all of it. Thank you for coming. She hesitated, then rose on her toes to press a soft kiss to his cheek. Good night, Declan. Good night. He watched her drive away in that 15-year-old car she'd mentioned, and realized that somewhere between her first song at the Blue Note and tonight's tentative honesty, he'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with Melody McLaurin. The realization should have sent him running. Instead, for the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Chapter 4. The first crack in their carefully built foundation came on a Wednesday morning, delivered in the form of a phone call that would change everything. Declan was reviewing architectural plans for his newest hotel when Carmen appeared in his doorway with an expression that immediately put him on alert. "Terry DuPont is online too," she said quietly. DuPont, owner of the Lincoln Hotel chain and Declan's biggest competitor in the luxury hospitality market. They'd been rivals for 15 years, ever since DuPont had tried to poach 3 of Declan's key investors during the expansion into the West Coast. "What does he want?" he asked specifically about Ms. McLaurin. Cold dread settled in Declan's stomach. "Put him through." "Grantham." DuPont's voice carried its usual blend of false cordiality and barely concealed aggression. "How's business? What do you want, Terry?" "Straight to the point." "I like that." DuPont chuckled. "I want to make you an offer. A trade, you might say. I'm not interested in your jazz singer, Melody McLaurin. I want to offer her a contract." The world seemed to tilt. "She already has a contract. A better contract. Significantly better." DuPont's tone turned smug. "I'm opening a new venue in Nashville next month. High-end jazz club, national media coverage, recording industry connections. I need a headliner who can draw crowds and impress the right people. And you think that's Melody?" "I know it is. I heard her perform at your little Crown Room last week. Extraordinary talent. Wasted in a hotel lounge when she could be headlining a purpose-built venue." Declan's hand tightened on the phone. "She's not available. Everyone's available for the right price, Grantham. $300,000 a year, plus a percentage of ticket sales, plus I'll introduce her to my contacts at Blue Note Records." The pause was calculated for maximum impact. "I understand her daughter's college-bound. Northwestern's expensive, even with scholarships. $300,000. 50% more than Declan was paying her, plus recording industry connections that could launch her career nationally. It was an offer no struggling single mother could reasonably refuse. "She won't be interested," Declan said, but the words felt hollow even to him. "We'll see. I'm having lunch with her tomorrow." "You contacted her directly?" "Of course. This is business, not personal." DuPont's laugh was razor-sharp. "Unless it's personal for you? I heard rumors about you and the Songbird, but I assumed they were exaggerated. You wouldn't be stupid enough to get romantically involved with an employee, would you?" The line went dead, leaving Declan staring at the phone and feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Melody didn't mention the lunch meeting during that evening's performance, but Declan could sense something different in her manner. She was distracted during sound check, fumbling lyrics she knew by heart, and her usual warm greeting felt forced. After the show, instead of their customary few minutes together, she packed up quickly and headed for the elevator without meeting his eyes. "Melody." She paused, her hand on the call button. "Is everything all right?" "Fine. Just tired." Still not looking at him. "Are you sure? You seemed." "I said I'm fine, Declan." The sharpness in her voice was so unlike her that he stepped back, stung. The elevator doors closed between them, and he was left standing alone in the Crown Room, wondering what had changed and afraid he already knew. Thursday morning brought confirmation in the form of Helena's unexpected visit to his office. His sister swept in wearing her usual armor of designer clothes and disapproval, her perfectly styled blonde hair and cold blue eyes making her look like their mother had at that age. "We need to talk," Helena announced, settling into one of his guest chairs without invitation. "Good morning to you too, Helena." This is serious, Declan. She crossed her legs and fixed him with the stare that had intimidated countless society matrons. I had lunch at the Lincoln yesterday. Terry DuPont was there, entertaining a very attractive black woman who looked remarkably like your jazz singer. His blood ran cold. You saw them together? I saw him showing her around his new club space. Talking animatedly about recording contracts and career opportunities. Helena's smile was sharp. She looked very interested. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. Melody had gone to lunch with DuPont and hadn't said a word about it. Had listened to his offer, toured his facility, discussed opportunities that could take her far away from Chicago and the Crown Room and him. Did she see you? No. But I made sure to find out what I could. Helena leaned forward. He's offering her significantly more money, Declan. Plus industry connections you can't match. How do you know what he's offering? Because I make it my business to know these things when they affect my brother. Her expression softened slightly. Are you in love with her? The question hung in the air like a challenge. He could lie, could pretend this was purely professional concern, could maintain the fiction that Melody McLaurin was just another employee. Yes, he said quietly. I am. Helena closed her eyes briefly, as if his admission confirmed her worst fears. Oh, Declan. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're making the same mistake you made with Nora. Falling for someone who sees you as a stepping stone rather than a destination. The comparison to his ex-wife stung because he'd been thinking it himself. Melody's not Nora. Isn't she? A beautiful woman from a different social class, struggling financially, suddenly faced with an opportunity that could change her life? Helena stood, moving to the windows. You're a means to an end, just like before. You don't know her. I know enough. I know she's been lying to you about meeting with your biggest competitor. I know she's considering an offer that would take her away from everything you've built together. Helena turned back to face him. What I don't know is why you're setting yourself up for another devastating betrayal. Because somewhere between Melody's first song and last night's dinner, he'd started to believe in second chances. In the possibility that two damaged people could heal each other instead of destroying each other. In the idea that love could be built on honesty and trust instead of convenience and mutual benefit. But sitting in his office, staring out at the city where Melody was somewhere making decisions that could shatter his world, those beliefs felt naive and dangerous. I have to get back to work, he said finally. Helena studied his face, then nodded. Be careful, Declan. I can't watch you go through another divorce. After she left, Declan sat alone in his office, staring at the phone and debating whether to call Melody directly. Part of him wanted to confront her about DuPont's offer, to demand honesty about what she was considering. Part of him was afraid of what she might tell him. In the end, he did nothing. Because if Melody was planning to leave, if DuPont's offer was too good to refuse, then he'd rather hear it from her than force a conversation that might end everything between them. That evening's performance was torture. Melody sang beautifully, as always, but there was a distance in her manner that felt like goodbye. When she performed I'll Be Seeing You, a song about parting and memory, her eyes found his with an expression that looked dangerously close to apology. After the show, she approached him with obvious reluctance. Can we talk? She asked quietly. His heart sank. Of course. They rode the elevator to his penthouse in heavy silence. In his living room, she moved to the windows but didn't sit, her body language screaming tension and conflict. I had lunch with Terry DuPont yesterday, she said without preamble. I know. She turned, surprised. How? He called me. Made sure I knew he was poaching my best talent. Her wince told him everything he needed to know about how seriously she was considering the offer. I should have told you, she said. Yes. You should have. I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you, and I knew this would be difficult. Difficult. Such a small word for the complete destruction of everything he'd started to believe about them. What did he offer you? Declan asked, though he already knew. 300,000 a year. Plus recording industry connections. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Plus a chance to perform original material in a venue designed specifically for jazz. And you're considering it. I have to consider it. For Aaliyah's sake, for my career, it's everything I've ever dreamed of. The honesty was brutal and admirable and completely devastating. She wasn't lying to him or trying to manipulate the situation. She was simply telling him the truth, that DuPont's offer was better than anything Declan could provide, and she'd be foolish not to take it. When do you have to decide? He wants an answer by Monday. 3 days. 3 days to figure out how to compete with an offer that could change her entire life, or 3 days to prepare for losing the only woman who'd ever made him believe in love again. What does Aaliyah think? Melody's smile was sad. She says I should follow my heart. That money isn't everything and success doesn't mean anything if you're miserable. She laughed shakily. Apparently my 14-year-old has better perspective than I do. What does your heart tell you? That's the problem. She moved closer, her dark eyes full of conflicted emotion. My heart tells me to stay here, with you, and see where this leads. But my head knows that's selfish. How is it selfish? Because I'd be choosing my own happiness over my daughter's future. Over opportunities that might never come again. Her voice broke slightly. Because I'd be betting everything on something that might not work out between us. The fear in her voice, the vulnerability she was showing him, made his chest tight. She was terrified, of making the wrong choice, of hurting her daughter, of trusting her feelings about him when her judgment had failed her so catastrophically before. And if it doesn't work out, he asked quietly. Between us? Then I'd have given up the chance of a lifetime for nothing. And Aaliyah would pay the price for my poor judgment. He wanted to promise her it would work out, wanted to guarantee that choosing him wouldn't be a mistake. But they both knew how hollow such promises could be. I can't ask you to turn down an opportunity like that, he said finally. Relief and disappointment warred across her features. You can't. I won't be the reason you don't pursue your dreams. I won't be the man who holds you back from everything you've worked for. She searched his face, looking for something he wasn't sure he could give her. What if I don't want to go? Then don't. But make sure you're staying for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? He moved closer, close enough to see the tears she was trying not to shed. Because you love what we're building here. Because you believe in us enough to take the risk. Because staying feels like moving towards something rather than running away from something. And if I'm just scared? If I'm using what's happening between us as an excuse to avoid taking a chance on my career? It was a fair question, and one he'd been asking himself. Were they falling in love, or were they both just so damaged by past relationships that they were clinging to something safe and familiar? I don't know, he said honestly. But I think we deserve the chance to find out. She was crying now, tears sliding down her cheeks as she struggled with a decision that could change both their lives. This is so hard, she whispered. The best things usually are. His phone rang then, shattering the moment. He ignored it, but it rang again immediately. Answer it, Melody said, wiping her eyes. It might be important. It was Carmen, her voice tight with urgency. I'm sorry to call so late, but you need to see tomorrow's Tribune. The entertainment section. What about it? There's a photo of you and Ms. McLaurin. From last week's performance. And the caption. Carmen's pause was ominous. It's not good. Cold dread settled in his stomach. What does it say? Hotel Mogul's jazz romance, is Melody McLaurin singing for love or money? The words hit like physical blows. Someone had photographed them at the Crown Room, captured one of those moments when they'd been looking at each other with obvious intimacy, and turned it into tabloid gossip. "How bad is it?" he asked. "Bad enough that I've already gotten 3 calls from reporters asking for comments about your relationship." Melody had gone pale, clearly hearing enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. "I'll handle it," Declan said. "Kill any interviews, no comments to anyone." "Already done." "But sir, you should know that Ms. McLaurin's name is trending on social media. Not all of the comments are kind." He closed his eyes, imagining the speculation and judgment Melody would face. A black woman involved with a wealthy white man would attract attention from people with strong opinions about interracial relationships, gold digging, and class differences. "I'll call you tomorrow," he said, hanging up. Melody was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. "How bad?" "Bad enough that you're about to become a topic of public speculation." "About us? About whether I'm with you for money?" "Among other things." She sank onto his couch, her head in her hands. "This changes everything." "No, it doesn't." "Of course it does." She looked up at him with eyes full of pain and resignation. "Don't you see? This proves exactly what I was afraid of. Getting involved with you puts me in an impossible position. Now no matter what I accomplish, people will assume it's because I'm sleeping with my boss." The unfairness of it enraged him, but he could see her point. The moment their relationship became public, her talent and professionalism would be overshadowed by speculation about their involvement. "We can handle this," he said. "How? By hiding? By pretending there's nothing between us?" She shook her head. "That's not fair to either of us. Then we go public properly. On our terms. And what happens to my daughter when she has to deal with classmates and teachers who've read gossip about her mother's love life? What happens when this follows me for the rest of my career?" He didn't have answers for those questions, and they both knew it. "Maybe," she said slowly, "maybe this is a sign. Maybe DuPont's offer came at exactly the right time. You're going to run away because of some gossip? I'm going to protect my daughter and my career from a situation that's become untenable." Her voice was stronger now, more decisive. "I think I should take the Nashville job." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. "Just like that? Just like that?" Have you ever faced a moment when love and practical considerations pulled you in opposite directions? When you had to choose between following your heart and protecting the people you care about? These impossible decisions shape us, don't they, the moments when there's no perfect choice, only the hope that we're strong enough to live with whatever we decide. She stood, gathering her purse with shaking hands. "I should go. I need to think." "Melody, please. Don't make this decision based on fear." "I'm not." She paused at the elevator. "I'm making it based on reality. And the reality is that this," she gestured between them, "is a luxury I can't afford." The elevator doors closed, and she was gone, leaving him alone with the wreckage of everything he'd started to believe about second chances and healing and love being worth the risk. Outside his windows, the city glittered indifferently, and somewhere in it, Melody was driving home to tell her daughter that they might be moving to Nashville for a fresh start. Declan poured himself a bourbon and tried to figure out how he'd gone from the happiest he'd been in years to completely alone in the span of a single evening. But deep down, he knew the answer. He'd made the same mistake he'd made with Nora. He'd assumed that love was enough to overcome practical considerations. He'd forgotten that some people, no matter how much they might care for you, would always choose security over sentiment. And maybe, in Melody's position, with a daughter to protect and a career to consider, he'd make the same choice. That didn't make it hurt any less. Chapter 5. Friday morning brought no relief from the media storm. By the time Declan arrived at his office, Carmen had fielded 17 calls from entertainment reporters, 3 requests for exclusive interviews, and 1 particularly aggressive photographer who'd tried to access the Crown Room for behind-the-scenes shots. The Tribune's story has been picked up by 6 other outlets, Carmen reported, setting a stack of newspapers and printouts on his desk. Social media engagement is significant. Declan scanned the headlines with growing disgust. Hotel heiress or gold digger? From jazz club to jackpot. The voice that stole a millionaire's heart. Each one reduced Melody's talent and their relationship to cheap sensationalism. Any word from Ms. McLaurin? She called this morning to cancel tonight's performance. Said she needed time to think. Carmen's expression was carefully neutral. She sounded upset. Of course she was upset. Her private life had been splashed across Chicago's entertainment pages, her integrity questioned by strangers who knew nothing about her character or work ethic. Sir? Carmen's voice was gentle. There's something else. What now? Samuel Brooks called. The music producer? He wants to meet with Ms. McLaurin about a recording contract. Declan looked up sharply. When? This afternoon. Apparently the media attention has generated interest in her work. Carmen paused. He's legitimate, sir. His label has produced 3 Grammy winners in the last 5 years. So the gossip that was destroying their relationship was simultaneously creating career opportunities for Melody. The irony was brutal and perfect. Did you give him her number? I told him I'd pass along the message. Declan stared out his office windows at the city below. Somewhere out there, Melody was probably fielding similar calls, dealing with reporters and producers and opportunities that had materialized because tabloid speculation had made her name recognizable. Another knock interrupted his thoughts. This time it was Thomas Rhodes, looking uncharacteristically grim. We need to talk, Thomas said, closing the office door behind him. If this is about the media coverage, it's about stupidity. Specifically, yours. Thomas settled into a chair across from Declan's desk. I just spent an hour on the phone with Melody McLaurin. Declan's pulse spiked. She called you? She wanted advice. About Nashville, about the recording contract offers, about whether she should run away from the best thing that's happened to either of you. Thomas's weathered face was stern. Do you know what I told her? I'm sure you'll enlighten me. I told her that the man I raised would fight for what he wanted instead of wallowing in self-pity and assumptions. Thomas leaned forward. What the hell is wrong with you? She's making the smart choice. No, she's making the scared choice. Just like you are. Thomas's voice carried the authority of someone who'd known Declan since he was a broken teenager in foster care. That woman is in love with you, and you're going to let her walk away because some gossip rags printed speculation? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Life is complicated enough without creating problems that don't exist. Thomas stood, pacing to the windows. I've watched you build an empire, son. I've seen you overcome obstacles that would destroy weaker men. But when it comes to love, you turn into a coward. The words stung because they were true. She has to think about her daughter. Her daughter likes you. Encouraged her mother to take risks on happiness. Thomas turned back to face him. Aaliyah has more sense than both of you combined. You've met Aaliyah? Melody brought her to lunch yesterday. Wanted me to meet the most important person in her life before making any major decisions. Thomas's expression softened slightly. Remarkable young woman. Brilliant, articulate, and absolutely devoted to her mother's happiness. The image of Thomas having lunch with Melody and Aaliyah, discussing their future while he sat in his office feeling sorry for himself, was both touching and humbling. What did Aaliyah say? She said her mother had been singing around the house again for the first time in years. Said she'd never seen her mother look at anyone the way she looked at you. Thomas resumed his seat. She also said that if you were stupid enough to let fear keep you apart, then maybe her mother was better off without you. 14 years old and already that wise? Wisdom doesn't require age, just clear vision. Something you seem to have lost. Thomas studied Declan's face. What are you really afraid of? The question cut straight to the heart of everything he'd been avoiding. That she'll leave anyway. That no matter what I do or say, she'll choose security over sentiment. Just like Nora. Melody McLaurin is not Nora. How do you know? Because Nora never looked at you the way Melody does. Because Nora was interested in your wealth, not your heart. Because when faced with a difficult choice, Nora took the money and ran, while Melody is agonizing over a decision that could hurt someone she cares about. Thomas was right, and Declan knew it. The situations were completely different, but his old wounds were making it impossible to see clearly. The media attention, the gossip about gold digging, will die down in a week when some celebrity gets arrested or married or divorced. Thomas waved dismissively. You're both letting tabloid nonsense dictate major life decisions. And if it doesn't die down? If it follows her for the rest of her career? Then you face it together. Like adults who love each other. Thomas leaned forward intently. Do you remember what I told you when you were 25 and afraid to expand into the West Coast? That nothing worthwhile was ever achieved without risk. And? That the biggest risk was not taking any risks at all. Exactly. Thomas smiled for the first time since arriving. Melody McLaurin is worth the risk, son. The question is whether you have the courage to fight for her. By evening, Declan had made his decision. If Melody was determined to leave Chicago, he wouldn't try to stop her. But he wouldn't let her go without knowing exactly what she was walking away from. He found her at her modest two-story house in a middle-class neighborhood 40 minutes from downtown. The front yard was small but beautifully maintained, with flower boxes under the windows that suggested someone who created beauty even in everyday spaces. Aaliyah answered the door, a tall, slender teenager with her mother's expressive eyes and an adult's direct gaze. You must be Mr. Grantham, she said politely. Mom's in the backyard. Thank you. He paused, studying the young woman who'd become such an important factor in Melody's decisions. For what it's worth, your mother is extraordinarily proud of you. Aaliyah's smile was warm, genuine. She should be proud of herself too. She just has trouble seeing it sometimes. Wise words from someone so young. No wonder Melody was willing to sacrifice everything for this remarkable daughter. The backyard was small but charming, with a vegetable garden and a wooden swing set that had seen better days. Melody sat on the porch steps, still in jeans and an oversized sweater, looking younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. Declan. She stood as he approached, her expression guarded. I wasn't expecting you. I know. But I needed to see you before you made your final decision. She gestured to the porch swing. We can sit here. The evening air was cool, filled with the sounds of suburban life. Children playing in neighboring yards, the distant hum of traffic, a dog barking somewhere down the street. It was completely different from his penthouse view of the glittering city, and somehow more peaceful. I talked to Samuel Brooks today, she said quietly. The record producer. Carmen told me he called. He's offering a 3-album deal. Good terms, creative control, national distribution. Her voice was neutral. Everything I ever dreamed of when I was starting out. That's wonderful. Is it? Because it feels like everything's happening for the wrong reasons. Like I'm benefiting from gossip and speculation instead of my actual talent. He turned to face her more fully. Your talent is what made people notice you in the first place. The media attention just permitted them to pay attention. Maybe. She was quiet for a moment. DuPont wants an answer by Monday morning. And Brooks? He's flexible on timing. Says he understands I have some decisions to make first. They sat in silence, both aware that everything between them was balanced on the edge of whatever she decided in the next 72 hours. Thomas came to see me today, Declan said finally. I know. I asked him to. Why? Because I needed perspective from someone who knows us both. Someone who could be honest about whether I'm making the right choice for the right reasons. And what did he tell you? Her smile was sad. That you're both idiots who are letting fear make your decisions instead of love. That sounded like Thomas. He's probably right. Probably. She turned to look at him directly. What are you afraid of, Declan? Really? The question he'd been asking himself for days. That you'll choose Nashville because it's safer than choosing me. That I'll convince you to stay and you'll resent me for it later. That we're both so damaged by past relationships that we can't tell the difference between love and convenience anymore. And if we can't tell the difference, then we're about to make a very expensive mistake. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't respond. Finally, she said, I'm afraid too. Of what? Of staying for you and then discovering it wasn't real. Of uprooting Aaliyah's life for opportunities that might not work out. Of being 45 and starting over again because I chose wrong. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Of being happy. That last admission broke his heart. Why are you afraid of being happy? Because every time I've been truly happy, something's gone wrong. My parents died. Aaliyah's father betrayed me. Gran got sick. She wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. It's easier to expect disappointment than to hope for something better and have it taken away. He understood that fear intimately. After losing his parents, then navigating the foster care system, then surviving Nora's betrayal, he'd learned to protect himself by not wanting things too badly. What if we're wrong? He asked quietly. What if happiness isn't something that gets taken away, but something we take away from ourselves by being too afraid to claim it? What if we're not wrong? What if I stay here and we try this and it falls apart anyway? Then we'll have tried. We'll have been brave enough to see what was possible instead of running away from what might go wrong. She studied his face in the gathering darkness. Is that what you want? For me to stay and see what happens? I want you to choose what makes you happiest. Not what feels safest, not what other people expect, not what looks best on paper. He reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. I want you to choose the life you actually want instead of the life you think you should want. And if what I want is both? The career opportunities in Nashville and whatever's growing between us here? Then we figure out how to make both work. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean I can run hotels from anywhere. I mean Nashville has a thriving hospitality industry that could use some Chicago expertise. I mean maybe it's time for me to stop being so attached to staying in one place. He squeezed her hand gently. If you want the Nashville opportunity, take it. But don't think choosing your career means choosing not to choose me. You'd move to Nashville? I'd move anywhere if it meant being with you. The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable and completely terrifying for someone who'd spent years avoiding emotional risks. Even if the media attention doesn't die down. Even if people keep speculating about our relationship. Let them speculate. Anyone who knows you knows the truth about your character and talent. Even if Helena disapproves. Helena will get over it. And if she doesn't, that's her loss. Melody was crying openly now, tears of relief and hope and fear all mixed together. Even if I have a daughter who'll need help with college expenses? He pulled her closer, until she was curled against his side on the porch swing. I love you. And I love Aaliyah almost as much as you do. You love me? The question was whispered against his chest, vulnerable and hopeful. Completely. Terrifyingly. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Do you love me? Yes. Her voice was stronger now, more certain. I love you so much it scares me. Good. Being scared means it matters. They sat together on the porch swing as full darkness settled around them, holding each other and talking about practical things, logistics of moving, timeline for decisions, how to handle media attention, what to tell Aaliyah about their plans. Speaking of Aaliyah, Melody said eventually, she wants to meet you properly. I'd like that too. She's protective. And she has very strong opinions about the men I date. What kind of opinions? That they should worship the ground I walk on and be prepared to prove they're worthy of my attention. Melody's laugh was warm. She may have gotten that attitude from me. Smart girl. You should be worshipped. Careful. Say things like that and I might start believing them. You should believe them. You should believe you deserve everything you want instead of settling for what feels safe. She pulled back to look at him directly. Is that what we're doing? Choosing what we want instead of what feels safe? I think we're choosing to be brave enough to find out if what we want and what we need are the same thing. And if they're not? Then we'll figure it out together. Like adults who love each other and want each other to be happy. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were smiling. I should probably call DuPont on Monday morning, she said. To accept his offer? To turn it down? Her smile grew wider. And then I should call Samuel Brooks to discuss recording contracts that don't require moving to Nashville. You're sure? I'm sure that I want to find out what happens when two people stop being afraid of their own happiness. She stood, pulling him to his feet. Come inside. I want you to have that proper conversation with Aaliyah. What if she doesn't approve of me? Then you'll have to work harder to win her over. Because we're a package deal, Grantham. You get both McLaurin women or neither. Best deal I've ever been offered. Hand in hand, they walked toward the house where Aaliyah was waiting to interrogate the man who'd managed to make her mother believe in love again. And for the first time in years, Declan found himself looking forward to being thoroughly examined by someone whose opinion mattered more than financial projections or business plans. He was looking forward to being part of a family. Chapter 6. 3 months later, the Crown Room buzzed with anticipation for what Chicago media had dubbed the performance of the year. Melody stood backstage, adjusting her emerald silk dress, the same color she'd worn for their soft opening, though now it carried different meaning. Tonight wasn't about proving herself as the Crown Room's headliner. Tonight was about celebrating the recording contract with Samuel Brooks, the upcoming album release, and the love story that had survived tabloid speculation to become something real and lasting. You ready for this? Danny Keys asked, his hands poised over the Steinway's keys. More ready than I've ever been, Melody replied, and meant it. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of change and growth. After turning down DuPont's Nashville offer, she'd thrown herself into working with Brooks on her debut album. The recording sessions had been everything she'd dreamed of: creative freedom, national distribution, and the chance to share her grandmother's jazz standards alongside contemporary pieces that reflected her own journey. But the real transformation had been personal. Learning to trust Declan completely, watching Aaliyah flourish in her relationship with both of them, discovering that love didn't have to mean losing herself, it had been like learning to breathe again after years of holding her breath. Ladies and gentlemen, she heard Declan's voice from the main room. Please welcome the Crown Room's resident artist and Chicago's newest recording star, Melody McLaurin. She walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, her eyes immediately finding Declan's in the audience. He sat at their usual table with Thomas Rhodes, Helena, and, most importantly, Aaliyah, who'd been granted special permission to attend her mother's album release celebration. The sight of them all together, this unlikely family they'd built from broken pieces and second chances, filled her with a warmth that had nothing to do with stage lights. "Good evening," she said into the microphone, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd found her place in the world. 3 months ago, I stood on this stage as a struggling single mother who sang to pay the bills. Tonight, I'm here as a woman who's learned that the best things in life are worth fighting for, worth risking everything to claim, and worth celebrating when you're brave enough to choose happiness over safety. She glanced at Declan, whose smile was radiant with pride and love. This first song is from my upcoming album, Second Chances. It's called Learning to Fall, and it's about discovering that sometimes the most frightening leap is the one that teaches you how to fly. The opening notes were haunting, contemporary jazz with a classic soul. As Melody began to sing, her voice wrapping around lyrics about vulnerability and trust and the courage to love again, the room fell completely silent. I built walls so high, thought I'd never need rescue. Told myself that lonely was safer than heartbreak. But then you sang to me in a language I'd forgotten. And I remembered what it felt like to want something more than safety. The song was deeply personal, written during those uncertain weeks when she'd been deciding between Nashville and Chicago, between security and the unknown. Now, looking out at faces touched by the raw honesty in her voice, she understood what her grandmother had meant about jazz being the only truly honest music. When the song ended, the applause was immediate and overwhelming. But Melody's attention was focused on her table, where Aaliyah was wiping tears from her eyes and Declan was looking at her like she'd just performed miracles instead of simply singing her truth. "Thank you," she said when the applause died down. "This next song is a jazz standard that my grandmother used to sing. She taught me that music has the power to heal anything, if you let it." At Last, by Etta James. As she began the familiar opening lines, her eyes locked with Declan's across the room. The song had new meaning now, not just about finding love, but about finding the courage to claim it. When she reached the chorus, about lonely days being over and finding a dream to call her own, she saw him mouth the words, "I love you," from across the room. The performance continued for another hour, a curated journey through jazz standards and original compositions that told the story of a woman learning to trust her heart again. When she finally took her bow to a standing ovation, Melody felt transformed, not just as a performer, but as a human being who'd chosen to stop running from happiness. Backstage, she was immediately surrounded by congratulations from staff and well-wishers, but she only had eyes for the small group making their way toward her. Aaliyah reached her first, throwing her arms around her mother with teenage enthusiasm. "Mom, that was incredible. I'm so proud of you. Thank you, baby. Having you here tonight means everything." Thomas was next, his weathered face beaming with paternal pride. "Your grandmother would be so proud, my dear. That was extraordinary." Even Helena, who'd initially been skeptical of their relationship, offered genuine congratulations. "You have a remarkable gift, Melody. I'm glad my brother was smart enough to fight for you." But it was Declan who mattered most, Declan who waited until the others had offered their praise before stepping forward to pull her into his arms. "You were magnificent," he said against her ear. "Absolutely magnificent. I couldn't have done it without you. Without all of you." She pulled back to look at the people who'd become her chosen family. "A year ago, I never imagined I'd have this, the career, the album, the man I love, watching my daughter thrive. I never imagined I'd be brave enough to want it all." "You were always brave," Declan said quietly. "You just needed to remember it." Later that evening, after the celebration had wound down and Aaliyah had gone to bed, Melody and Declan found themselves alone in his penthouse. The city glittered below them, but the view that had once seemed cold and distant now felt warm and welcoming, a reminder of how far they'd both traveled from the lonely people they'd been just months before. "I have something for you," Declan said, pulling a small wrapped box from his jacket pocket. Melody's breath caught. "Declan. It's not what you think." "Well, not exactly what you think." His smile was nervous, boyish. "Open it." Inside was a set of keys, car keys, house keys, and something that looked like a hotel key card. The car keys are for the Honda Pilot in the parking garage. It's got excellent safety ratings and enough room for all of Aaliyah's college gear. His words tumbled over each other in his nervousness. The house keys are for the place I bought in Evanston, close to Northwestern, so Aaliyah can come home whenever she wants. And the key card. What's the key card for? The crown room. Your own private access, so you can practice whenever you want, even when we're closed. He took her hands in his. I know it's presumptuous, and I know we haven't talked about living together officially, but I thought maybe. She silenced him with a kiss, pouring 3 months of love and gratitude and joy into the connection between them. Yes, she said against his lips. Yes to the car, yes to the house, yes to the key card. Yes to whatever you're asking. I haven't asked the most important question yet. Her heart stopped. What question? The one about spending the rest of our lives figuring out how to make each other happy. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring box. Melody McLaurin, will you marry me? Will you let me love you and Aaliyah and build a family with me? Will you take the biggest risk of all and bet on us? The ring was perfect, a vintage Art Deco setting with a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like stars. It was elegant without being ostentatious, unique without being flashy. It was completely her. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, yes, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that shook slightly, then stood to kiss her with the passion of a man who'd thought he might lose her and instead found everything he'd ever wanted. Aaliyah's going to lose her mind, Melody said when they finally broke apart. Good lose her mind or bad lose her mind? Good. Definitely good. She's been dropping hints about wedding planning for weeks. Smart girl. I like her already. She likes you too. More than likes you, she trusts you with me. That's everything. They held each other in the quiet of his penthouse, looking out at the city where they'd found each other and chosen to build something beautiful from their broken pieces. I love you, Declan said quietly. I love you too. All of you, your complicated past, your trust issues, your determination to take care of everyone you love. She smiled up at him. Even your overprotective sister. She's warming up to you. She's worried about you getting hurt again. I understand that. Are you going to hurt me? Melody considered the question seriously. I'm going to love you so completely that you'll never doubt you made the right choice. I'm going to build a life with you that's worth every risk we took to find each other. And I'm going to spend every day proving that some second chances are worth everything. Promise? I promise. The kiss that followed was soft and sweet and full of promises, not just of passion, but of partnership. Of quiet mornings and shared dreams and love that grows stronger with time instead of fading with familiarity. 6 months later, on a perfect spring morning in the crown room filled with white roses and jazz standards played softly in the background, Melody McLaurin became Melody Grantham in front of an intimate gathering of the people who mattered most. Aaliyah served as maid of honor, radiant in lavender silk and already calling Declan, Dad, with the casual confidence of someone who'd never doubted she was loved. Thomas walked Melody down the aisle with the dignity of a father giving away his beloved daughter. Even Helena wept during the ceremony, finally admitting that sometimes the heart chooses better than the head. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Declan kissed his bride with the tenderness of someone who knew exactly how precious the gift he'd been given was, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. During their first dance to "The Way You Look Tonight," the same song Melody had been singing that first night in the empty crown room, she whispered in his ear, "Do you remember what you said that night? About taking risks? That nothing worthwhile was ever achieved without risk? And that the biggest risk was not taking any risks at all. I remember. You were right. About all of it." She smiled up at him with eyes full of love and certainty. "This, us, this family we've built, this life we've chosen, it's the biggest risk either of us has ever taken. And it's the most worthwhile thing I've ever achieved." Even bigger than the album? The recording contract? The national tour that starts next month? Especially bigger than all of that. Because none of the career success would mean anything without someone to share it with. Without a family to come home to. Without love that's worth celebrating. As they swayed together on their wedding day, surrounded by the people who'd supported their journey from caution to courage, from fear to love, from the safety of solitude to the adventure of partnership, both Declan and Melody understood that they'd found something rare and precious. They'd found their way home to each other. And in the months and years that followed. Through Aaliyah's college graduation and medical school acceptance, through Melody's Grammy nomination and national acclaim, through the expansion of the hotel empire and the opening of new jazz venues in 3 cities, through quiet mornings and passionate nights and the 1,000 small moments that make up a life shared, they never forgot the lesson they'd learned in that first magical year. That love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose, every day, despite the risks and because of the possibilities. It's the decision to be brave enough to want something more than safety, and strong enough to fight for it when you find it. Some people spend their whole lives looking for that kind of love. Declan and Melody had been lucky enough to find it, wise enough to choose it, and brave enough to build a life worthy of it. Every love story teaches us something different, doesn't it? Some teach us about passion, others about patience. Some show us the power of forgiveness, while others remind us that it's never too late for a fresh start. What has love taught you? Whether you're still searching for your person, celebrating an anniversary, or healing from heartbreak, we'd love to hear your story. Share your experiences in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our Dear Love Diaries family. We share new stories of hope, healing, and unexpected love every day because we believe everyone deserves their own happily ever after. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story, and remember, your own love story is still being written. The next chapter could be the most beautiful one yet. Thank you for joining us on this journey of second chances and new beginnings. Until tomorrow, keep believing in love, keep choosing courage, and keep writing your own beautiful story. In the end, that's what love is, not a fairy tale ending, but a daily choice to write a beautiful story together, one page at a time.